Hello, welcome back to House of R. I'm Joanna Robinson. That is Mallory Rubin, and we are here today to talk to you about Squid Game, Season 3. Mallory?
Hide, it's time to play. Don't let your hair give you away. I don't think that was the tune, but it's the spirit.
Yeah. Really upsetting. Thanks so much for
Hey,
that.
you bet. Yeah, you bet.
Hello. We're here mostly to talk to you about Squid Game. I've got 2 orders of business before we get into our Squiddy Gamey stuff.
Tell me.
And before we even do like our what's coming up and all that sort of stuff. Real quick nerd business here at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Number one of our shared most anticipated films of next year dropped a trailer, Project Hail Mary.
Thrilling.
You and I lost our shit. I will say Mallory had previously lost her shit just over the poster.
Yeah.
And then the trailer dropped.
Yeah.
So without, this is a book that we both really, really loved.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Without spoiling anything for folks or whatever, I just want to get your temp check on your excitement level now that you've seen the trailer for Project Hail Mary.
As high as it could possibly be. Like will this be number 1 in next year's House of R hype draft? And then I have to remind myself of like the other things that are coming out next year and what a crowded field it's going to be. I love this book. I thought that the trailer was pitch perfect in terms of giving us all of the tone, like that blend of the type of adventure story it is, the stakes of the mission, the fate of humanity, the different characters. Obviously, this is not only like a Ryan Gosling starring vehicle, but a Lord and Miller film. So like the ability to land the humor inside of this spectacular circumstance is going to be on point. I'm not surprised, but I was still thrilled to see that. And then for anyone who doesn't want to watch the trailer and doesn't want to go like into the movie with any part of the story spoiled for them, I will speak in the vaguest terms possible here, but I would just say I was not anticipating that the end of the trailer would center on what it did, which is a part of the story that I love more than like most things that have entered my life in the past half decade. And I actually was like moved to tears. I was like, there it is.
I love it. You and I were both surprised that this element was introduced in the trailer. I was telling you that because when you posted the poster in our group chat, and Van, as this is want, did a contrarian like, I'm not gonna whatever this is, I'm not gonna pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And then later I was talking to him on the phone. I was like, you're gonna love Project Hail Mary. Like, you're gonna love this. You should read the book. You should he loves an audiobook. I was like, you should do the audiobook. I think the audiobook is one of the most extraordinary audiobook experiences I've ever had.
I haven't listened to it. I'll have to give it that. Maybe that's how I'll revisit it before the film. I should check out the audiobook.
Yeah, kind of because of that element that we're talking about. It's just done really, really well in audio. And so I was trying to talk around that for Van, and then I was like, oh, then they just put it in the trailer. So I was like, I don't know how to describe this to you, Van. There's a big spoiler. I don't know what to talk about. Yeah. And then they're just like, this is the premise of the movie. So I was like, okay.
Which I think in some ways is a shame just because it is such an incredible thing to stumble upon, but also I think is kind of good and like welcome, and everybody trying to sit on what a huge thrust of the story is for that long might be bad. And also now you can just lean in and how the film was marketed to this wonderful element. I can't fucking wait for this movie. It's soon. March is soon. March will be here before we know it.
I know. Very excited. So this is Lord and Miller, as you said, who we love, of course, based on an Andy Weir book. Andy Weir also wrote The Martian, among other things. And so for me, the moment of the trailer, other than what happens at the end, there's a sort of like that cam POV on the ship sort of diary moment that is very The Martian, that I'm just like really excited to see. Ryan Gosling, El Goncito, have his time with that. So anyway, I'm very, very excited. Thrilled. We're both very, very excited. I really, really recommend. This is not Ringerverse recommends. This is just an episode of House of R. But we both really, really recommend the book. I listened to it. Mallory read it. Either way, you're gonna have a blast with it. But like, this is just, you got to.
Yeah,
you got to.
It's
Project
the best.
Hail Mary. You have to. Okay. The other thing before we get into Squid Game stuff is we got an email from our listener Anna, who is going to her first Comic-Con.
Oh.
Not San Diego Comic-Con.
Okay.
Though Can we say that we're going to San Diego Comic-Con?
Didn't you tweet it already?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know that I said I said I'm going.
Okay.
We're going.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
I sure did tweet it and didn't check with anyone. Anyway, we're going to be at San Diego Comic-Con.
I'll be going for the first time ever. I've never been to San. I've been to New York Comic-Con. I've been to a Philadelphia Comic-Con.
Yeah.
I have never had the pleasure of going to San Diego Comic-Con. Delighted. I can't wait.
I did wait until we booked our hotels before I tweeted it. But anyway, we have our hotels booked. We are going.
We'll be there.
hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com if you have tips for Mallory on how to navigate San Diego Comic-Con. I have been a bunch of times, but not since COVID. And I hear things feel a little different post-COVID. So I'm excited to see what the new Comic-Con feel is. But we got a listener from an email from a listener, Anna, who's going to the Montreal Comic-Con. Oh, and she has a costume in mind. I'll talk about that in a second. But first and foremost, her question is, she said, the Hobbits plus Andy Serkis will be there.
Okay.
So Elijah, Sean, Billy, et cetera, are going to be there. Dom, if you could pick one, Andy Serkis or the Four Hobbits, if you could pick one to have a photo with, because those photos, they can stack up. They're costly. So like if you had to invest in one photo with one of these 5 fine gentlemen,
oh boy,
who would you pick? Mallory Rubin.
Oh my God. This is torturous. Is it possible to make the appeal that in the spirit of fellowship, it could be a group photo, or is that a violation of the prompt? Okay. I mean, I guess it would just have to be Sam.
That's you and I are on the same page. It is like so clearly Sean Astin. It's so clearly Sam. And then this is the added info that I didn't even have when I read this section of the email, but I already said Sean Astin in my head.
Yeah.
Anna is dressing as Rosie Cotton. She's got beautiful curly hair.
I mean, come on, then.
She's coming as Rosie Cotton.
Yeah.
So she's got Sean Astin, Sam Wise. It's got to be, right?
It's a must.
I just finished watching season 2 of Stranger Things, so Sean Astin's on my mind, of course, but he's always on my mind. Also, if you want to email me, hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com, us at hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com. I was making my standard argument to our beloved colleagues, Kai Grady and Rob Mahoney, that people who enjoy crushes on gentlemen go through these phases of life, and there's the young Legolas phase, there's the older Aragorn phase, and then you graduate to Samwise Gamgee. And Rob said it's only me who feels that way about Samwise Gamgee, and I just do not think that is the case. So if you disagree, he's like Aragorn is forever. I was like, I don't disagree with that. Vigo is eternal. Like I'm not disagreeing with that, but like Sam matters a lot,
certainly.
Not just to me.
Certainly.
hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com if you want to tell Rob that he's wrong about that. I wouldn't mind it. Anything else? Anna, you have your mission. It is to dress as Rosie Cotton, pose as Sean Astin, then of course, obviously send us a photo of that, please.
Naturally, yeah.
Anything else before we get into Squid Game and general pod business?
I don't think so.
Okay, what a joy, what a delight to see you as always. We're here to talk about the first 3 episodes of Squid Game season 3, which is only 6 episodes total. So we're going to talk about 1 through 3 today, and then we will be wrapping up our coverage later this week. So we're here to talk about Keys and Knives, The Starry Night, and It's Not Your Fault. Some truly harrowing episodes of television that we watched that we are here to talk to you about. So you can get the rest of Squid Game season 3 from us later this week. Next week, we're doing Back to the Future anniversary rewatch. Exciting. And also Inception. Hot Nolan Summer continues the pace. I got my
genuinely amazing.
The shooting script, the Inception shooting script here. Very exciting. Really excited to talk about that. A film that I love.
Same.
The Midnight Boys Pew Pew are covering Ironheart, Jurassic World, and a Superman versus Fantastic Four Midnight Court. That episode's been moved around a little bit, but I think it's coming. I think it's coming soon. Mallory Rubin, how can folks keep track of all of this great stuff that we're covering?
Here's what I would recommend. Follow the pods. Sure. Follow House of R, follow The Ringerverse on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch full video episodes of House of R and Midnight Boys Pew Pew on Spotify. And you can also watch us on the Ringerverse YouTube channel. So follow along there as well. You can also follow the Ringerverse on the social media platform of your choosing. We are on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. While you're at it, your phone's in your hand, you're at your computer. Send us your emails, whether they're about a Comic-Con plan, for a photo op, or anything else. hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com. The inbox is open. Send us your Squid Game thoughts before our second pod this week. Send us your Back to the Future anniversary thoughts, your Inception thoughts. Get ahead on your Superman and Fantastic Four thoughts. What are we? Let's see. Just a touch more than a month away, if memory serves, from our Buffy experience beginning.
Yes.
So send us your Buffy thoughts on season 1. It's just hot House of Our Summer is continuing apace, and we're having a blast.
I'm really excited. Like, Hot Nolan Summer is so good. The Stranger Things rewatch has been so good.
Delightful.
Over here in my household. This Back to the Future episode, though we're not exactly 100% sure what the full shape of it is. Back to the Future is one of the best films of all time. So it's like going to be a great time. I'm really excited.
I can't wait. It's generous spin to say not 100% sure. I would say we're 0% sure.
Well, I have an idea.
10%?
I haven't pitched it to you yet. So
it's going to be fun. Multiple rewatch pods next week. What a blast. What a moment for nostalgia. And, again, like, we're seeing Superman in days. It's July 1st right now. That movie comes out in a week and a half. What a time to be us. Can't wait.
I think it was yesterday, right, that I started sending you your daily Nicholas Holtz from the Superman press tour. I have too many options today. I just need to narrow it down to one.
No, don't.
And then I will send to you.
Send them all.
But the Nick Holt bleached hair, Lex Luthor social media stuff is top tier. Okay. Spoiler warning for today.
Yes.
All of Squid Game through season 3, episode 3.
Yes.
So we are not talking about the back half of the season. If you're like, hey man, I spent all weekend watching The Bear. I haven't had a chance to finish Squid Game. Don't worry. It's only the first half. So up through episode 3 is what we'll be talking about today. We'll be talking about some things we're looking forward to in the back half, but no spoilers for what's in the back half of the season. Right. Anything else you want to say on the spoiler front? I don't think there's anything else we plan to spoil.
I don't think so.
No? Okay. Let's do our general discussion before we have some questions we want to ask about Squid Game season 3. If you're sitting here and say, hey man, I didn't know you covered Squid Game before. I'm here to tell you that it's been a little bit of a ride through our Squid Game coverage heretofore on the Ringer. What a great platform for podcasts. Mallory and I covered season 1 together on the Prestige TV podcast feed, and we were brand new to podcasting full-time together. So if you want to hear the beginnings of our podcasting relationship, you can go back and listen to our season 1 coverage of Squid Game on the Prestige TV feed. Rob Mahoney and I, fell on the sword of the holiday Squid Game coverage at the end of last year. So December of last year, we covered season 2 on the Prestige feed, Rob and I. And then Mallory and I are wrapping it up here on House of R. What could be easier? What could be simpler than to spread the coverage of one show across multiple hosts and multiple feeds? But here we are on House of R.
Our own many-legged pentathlon-esque team up. It's great.
It's true. So to refresh anyone who didn't listen to our season 1 Prestige pods or the Prestige pods that I did with Rob, etc., what is your, Mallory, relationship to Squid Game?
I'm a fan. I am a fan. We've, touched on this a bit on House of R in hype drafts and hype meters both. I had Squid Game season 2 quite high on my winter, I believe. We always decide in real time what a season means, so it's hard to then later on remember exactly which season it was, but it must have been winter hype meter. That was quite high on my hype meter for last winter. And then I actually selected season 3 in my hype draft.
Yes.
Was a selection that was rejected by my fellow drafters in real time, but that's okay. I thought season 1, like many people, was, exceptional. It just wowed me, and it was actually really fun because I wasn't potting about season 2, I did not rewatch or revisit season 1 before watching season 2. And so it was really fun now, multiple years later, to go back and like refresh myself on the first trip into the game and the first season of the show, which is really wonderful. I think I was slightly higher on season 2 than some, though certainly had my notes on it as well. And I think that the splitting of seasons 2 and 3 was obviously, we kind of speculated about this in the period between, at the end of season 2 and then in the period between season 2 and season 3. But I think, definitively clear was a mistake. Obviously, this is just like the stretching of this story, even with the seasons airing, with a much shorter gap between them than seasons 1 and 2, just would have been better to put this all out at once and season. In a shorter episode total. But I'm excited to dive back into the arena with you today, and excited for today's pod to discuss the first 3 episodes, and looking forward to resuming our chat at the end of the week. I will tease that the episode in not just season 3, but seasons 2 and 3 that I'm highest on is in this batch of episodes. So that's a positive for today's chat. There's I think a real banger in the mix of these 3 that we have today here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that this is the pacing, which is what you're getting at between season 2 and 3. It really feels like at some points they're quite stretching and not have enough to do. And then in some cases it just feels extremely concentrated and unrelenting, not in a negative way necessarily, but in an overwhelming way. I did text you and Arjuna that episode 2, I think the word I used was like harrowing.
Yeah.
And then like as per usual, Detective Mallory got on the case and you're like, I think it's because of this. And I wanted to be like, actually, yes, that does happen, but that's not why. Just a lot happens in episode 2.
Yeah. That's the episode that I'm referring to. Okay. I thought that was like, in a painful and deeply unpleasant way, which is, to the show's credit,
right?
Really an extraordinary episode of television. And I think in many ways, the spiritual successor to season 1, episode 6, the fabled marbles episode, which is my favorite episode of season 1. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about that one today, and just in general, all of our other prompts. What about you? Where are you with your Squid Game journey? And obviously, like, we're not accounting for how we feel about, where we'll circle back, later this week on the second pod about how we feel about how this whole journey has concluded. So these thoughts are like slightly truncated until we get to consider the conclusion of the show, certainly. But where are you with the Squid Game experience?
I will say just up through through episode 3.
Yeah.
Episode 2 is extremely just jam-packed with a lot of things. But I will say, and we'll get to this in some of our questions, but the characters that I was most invested in are gone now. And which is not to say I'm not invested in Gi-hun, but like Gi-hun, our main character, sort of felt like he had his arc in season 1, and it was extremely satisfying. And though I'm not opposed to him being at the center of things here in season 2 and 3, and I found particularly like the dynamic between Gi-hun and In-ho, the frontman, when he was undercover, I thought all of that stuff was very juicy in season 2. But I'm not on tenterhooks about Gi-hun the way that I was about a number of other characters who have just been wiped off the board. Now, this is Squid Game.
Yeah.
And, you referenced the Marbles episode in season 1. In the Marbles episode in season 1, there was a lot of profound loss but I think I had more still to be invested in after that. And this, I felt like, oh no, all my favorite characters are gone. Like, what am I going to do? So I still have some things that I'm interested in the back third, but that is like the back 3. But that was just a sort of like a pacing question of like, am I still on the hook the way you want me to be for what you have remaining to tell inside of the story?
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to rank the seasons, I would rank them 1, 2, 3. Like 1 is the best. 2, I had a lot going for it. And 3, this second episode is just very memorable. But again, at the end of the day, I left when I fired up episode 3, and then even inside of episode 3, things happens. But when I fired episode 3, I was like, God, what am I gonna focus on now? And then like even more people left, and I was like, okay, all right, here we go. So
Yeah.
that's sort of where I am. On the sort of Squid Game phenomenon front, it's been really interesting to track. Obviously, season 1 was like just an insane smashable hit, changed the way that Netflix thought about international programming, was part of this massive sort of Korean wave of influx of culture to America, whether it's this or Parasite or BTS or K-pop in general or whatever it is, or the K-dramas that have become extremely popular. I have an aunt who just like only wants to talk to you about the K-dramas that she is watching on Netflix. She's a huge fan. So that it's you cannot overstate how influential the first season was, and won 6 Emmys, was just like this absolute sensation. We talked about it at the time, and I thought it was really interesting that it was way more popular in America than it was in Korea. And based on what research I've done via American and Korean outlets, it seems like over time, obviously the Korean audience is not a monolith, but I think they've warmed a bit more to Squid Game than perhaps they felt in season 1. And so there was like this massive parade of goodbye for Squid Game in Seoul this last week and stuff like that. So I think it has become more of a thing than it was in season 1 necessarily. But conversely, what's interesting for, I would say, probably predominantly American audiences voting on Rotten Tomatoes, though actually I don't know how international the Rotten Tomatoes ranked is, but our good old friend Rotten Tomatoes, an imperfect metric. We always like to talk about how imperfect it is. But there's been this like significant audience, the popcorn meter, as Mallory likes to articulate, the audience score has been in a bit of a free fall. From 84% in season 1 to down to 63% in season 2 and 66% in season 3. Now that percentage, I think, is holistically of like the entire season. So again, we'll talk about sort of the final 3 episodes of season 3. And also it's early. Plenty of people haven't had a chance to watch Squid Game season 3 yet. So that
once that number hits a certain point, I feel like it's hard in either direction. If it's very high, it's hard for it to be pulled too low over time. And similarly, if it's dancing around the divide between fresh and rotten, it's enough people watch Netflix shows when they drop as binges that I would have to assume that the voting mass there makes it hard for that number to move too heavily. But I am not a statistician. Let's add that to the list of things that we are not. On the imperfect metric front, we routinely cite the as you noted, the tomato meter and popcorn meter alike there. But another imperfect metric, but something that can be kind of like, especially I think if you're looking to like corroborate a metric that is appearing in one of these public voting forums, the IMDb episode ratings similarly are like very flawed, obviously, and are not necessarily indicative, and often are subject to some sort of review bombing. So like to all of those caveats issued, I will say to your point, and we'll come back to this obviously in our second pod later in the week. The number, it's like the high for the second episode, pretty good.
Craters.
Falls off a cliff.
Oh, no.
For the end of the season. So like, I think that, again, this will be good for us to circle back to in a couple of days. We'll talk about this more. I think clearly it seems that the way that the season, and thus because this is marketed as the final season, this show, or at least this version of the show in this form, it's Netflix. Nobody believes or has ever believed that this will be the end of this IP. It's just not going to happen. That people are like, I think, feeling a certain way about the back half of the season. So we'll come back to that on our Thursday pod.
Something that Rob and I talked about a bit when we covered season 2, and I want to get in with you here, is the kind of very clear intentional parallels between the story. Obviously, Gi-hun, our main character, as played by Lee Jung-jae, the fact that he is back in the games with his same number, like, of course, that is something that is going to be consistent across the seasons. But there are just a bunch of elements that feel like intentional repetitions of the previous season, whether it's the return of a literal same game, whether it's once again someone undercover as player number one, whether it's the friend from back home inside of the game, the voting process, the young female defector from North Korea who's wholly fixated on a missing family member. Like, do these similarities, are they interesting to you in a we're all stuck in the same cycle, or human nature same as it ever was, which is certainly something that the show is interested in, or compare, contrast the slight differences inside of these like larger same situations? Or does it feel sort of repetitive on an IP sort of rinse and repeat kind of way? How do you feel?
So I think all of the above. Like, this is a real, for me, more than one thing is true at once, and I'm of two minds at war with myself, all of the bits that you love. Because I think that, and I think that this will definitely come up as we hit some of our particulars when we discuss these 3 episodes, the rest of the pod. I think that there feels to me like a difference here between almost like assessing the intellectual exercise of returning to a lot of those elements, and then how compelling it is to watch that as a television show, right? So I'm actually quite intrigued philosophically as a study in human nature to those points, about putting our protagonist and our antagonist back in either the same or a similar situation with deliberate tweaks, and then seeing, obviously the pathway to returning to the game is quite distinct, but seeing what changes, seeing when people make different decisions, seeing how the individual bonds and relationships and dynamics that emerge, seeing how something like the distinction in if the players vote to leave, they can, in seasons 2 and 3 in that game, take the money that they've made up to that point. And you have like the instinct to think, okay, well, that makes them more likely to leave. And then of course it's the opposite, right? And I think like things like that are fascinating, actually. And so as a premise, I think it's really smart, undeniably. I think like, sure, person to person, you will have variance in the opinion here, but I would say almost inarguably it has robbed the second and third seasons of that almost like amorphous, intangible quality of the first season, which was, sure, a lot of it was about the political and social commentary, the excellent performances, the inventive nature of the specific renderings, the like really fucked up in a great, like, wallops you in the jaw way of taking these, the trappings of your youth, the innocent time in your life, and perverting them in this fucked up context. And it was shocking, right? It was shocking to watch season 1. Like, it was riveting, and you were wrapped, and it's Netflix, and it's a binge, so everybody just went episode to episode to episode, and nobody could stop. Right. But also, like, you kind of watch it from a state of awe. And I think the second and third seasons just are robbed of that element to a certain degree because inherently that element of surprise is gone. So yeah, it's like, I think again, like the mileage varies element to element on when it's been really interesting to see what changes. Like it feels to me like a comp you could make is, and this will, I'm sure not be the only time one of us invokes Survivor, but like, season after season, Survivor is the same show with deliberate tweaks. You change something about an advantage or something about the tribe breakup or when do they swap, et cetera. And it's like, we're 2 seasons away from season 50. We're season 49 is next and then season 50. It's like, we're on season 50 of people not only being okay with that, but being like, give me more, make the episodes longer. I can't wait for the next one. So it's not like it's an impossible thing for that to work. But I think when it is like the key element or such a key element to why it gripped so many people in the first place, it's just a little bit diluted when you're running so many things back.
Yeah. And I think also An unfortunate side effect of that, season 1, to your point, was such a surprise and then such a sort of adrenaline-fueled binge that you don't even really have time to stop and think about necessarily some of these elements, and especially in splitting the 2 seasons, I would say. So we have even more time to sort of marinate in our thoughts about this. I feel like you start to see this seams of what feels like almost what's the cruelest math we can do in any of these given scenarios. And there are ways in which that can be thrilling. Like, I found the season 2 set piece of I forget what it's specifically called, but sort of like the merry-go-round run into the rooms. Yeah, the mingle one. Yeah. I thought that was
great.
Riveting. I thought that's like one of the best things the show has ever done.
Same. Yeah.
And then when we get to episode 2, which is, what you and I have been highlighting in this section, which is this horrible hide and seek. There's math involved in terms of like, I have to kill someone in order to survive. We need all 3 keys in order to do this. Who are our allies? Who are our enemies? Did we swap a key for a knife? What did we do here? All that sort of stuff. Like, that is once again just like cruelty math. And cruelty math that is often telegraphed. If at the beginning of an episode we have mother and son have a meaningful talk about, what they'll do on the other side of this, and you're like, well, we're not making it through. What's the cruelest way we could not both make this through? Or my favorite character, Hyunju, like making one foot over the threshold, and then I'm like, well, that's curtains for that character. You know what I mean? So like, a lot of the stuff is telegraphed. A lot of his stuff feels sort of like someone took a schematic and wrote down like, what's the nastiest thing we could do to people inside of this episode. And I'm not, as a blanket statement against that. I just didn't feel the same sort of overwhelm. I'm just a passenger on this crazy ride feeling that I felt in season 1, which is similarly constructed in the Marbles episode, et cetera, of just sort of like, how can when you're watching the Marvel episode in season 1, you're like, I care so much about these 2 characters and only one of them is going to be able to make it.
Yeah.
Like, you just feel claustrophobic and, hopefully you're feeling claustrophobic the whole time because you're in this like horrifying bunker situation and people are dying everywhere, but even more so. So, all of that is, I feel very mixed. I feel super mixed on these 2 seasons of Squid Game, and I'm not upset with the experience, and I don't feel like they shouldn't have done it. But I do think it slightly dilutes the potency of season 1 to have these like slight stumbles here in season 2 and 3. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
Anything else you want to say on the Survivor front? I just watched a bunch of Survivor over the weekend, because you know, I was recouping from surgery. So I'm like in my survival mode, but obviously like the idea of the various alliances and losing people to one side or another. Someone who's been wearing the red X is now wearing the blue O, and you were like, oh, we lost another one. Anything you want to say as one of the preeminent Survivor scholars of our day about that, how that influences the way you watch Squid Game?
Thank you for that charitable setup. I don't know if I'd go that far. I would say an enthusiast. A scholar, maybe. Certainly about handsome players over the course of the season.
You gave me a whole lecture about the way in which their hair goes from gross to then like hits this other level where it becomes the most glossy, beautiful.
I am
mane.
really like awed by that. And a season or 2 ago, an F1 driver, George Russell, I don't know if he was inspired by Survivor. I believe he was inspired by his supermodel girlfriend who told him to do this, if I'm remembering my Instagram Reels content correctly. But he used the summer break in the F1 season to not wash his hair for, like a couple weeks, and then let it just emerge luscious and frankly astonishing. You should Google George Russell's hair. It's amazing. On the other end of it. And I was like, this is just, they did the Survivor. Wow.
Has this shortened Survivor season impacted this
interesting
hair transformation?
I'll have to think about that. I don't believe it has, just because it's that time frame for when your hair hits the other side, it's still contained in the shorter season. I wonder if the thing that's been more impacted by the shift down from 39 days is the likelihood that like one of their myriad mosquito bites festers and turns noxious, and they have to be like medically evacuated from the show because of a spider bite or something. That
the medical evacuations have gone down.
It's like, I don't know. That has been, even though seasons 2 and 3 have been on the whole less successful than season 1, I haven't really enjoyed, and obviously this was very actively centered not only in, and you know, again, we're lumping together seasons 2 and 3 because even though they're not labeled as such, they are clearly one season. This was really central to how like the heading into season 2, the setup was discussed and marketed and presented. Right. The centering of the voting and that element of like, you're wearing your vote on your chest and tracking which characters are standing pat and which characters are moving in and out of the different voting pools and why, and then whether their alliance, if somebody votes outside of the majority inside of a group, forget the majority overall, will welcome them back and understand that, I think has been fascinating. We'll talk more about the VIPs later today. Little teaser. Did not love the VIPs doing the like meta, let's pat ourselves on the back here by saying that the voting has been more compelling to watch than the games. Because it's like, first of all, I could do it basically without everything we got with the VIPs.
And the VIPs could have been gone this season and it would not have been a problem for me.
Which is, I have to say, like, I missed them in season 2, even though
you were excited for the return.
I was really excited for the return because I think that element of super heightened voyeuristic horror, like who is the game for? The fact that there are these people who, you know, and obviously at the end of season 1, we get that conversation between the chairman, between the head of the game, the host, player one. Number 1. And Gi-hoon about this idea that like it was created for these investors and this group of the exceedingly wealthy to then watch the less fortunate, the people who have been either failed by society or left behind or had made one bad decision or maybe repeated bad decisions, and then were sent into this hell pit to fight to make money at the end so that they could try to move forward. And like in season 1, there's player 456 is like not sharing the money, right?
Yeah.
He wins and that's it. So like the fact that there are these people who sit in masks and drink liquor and wear bathrobes and prop their feet up on other human beings, and fly their choppers in to watch the game, I just thought was such a like brilliant little ingredient of who this is for, why it happens, and then it kind of opens your mind to like, well, what is the extent of that appetite, right? This was not what I was looking for on the return, though. We'll come back to that, but I thought this was just a huge miss. And their role is expanded so substantially that it is really a demerit, I think, for this season.
At first, when they show up and they're there on like cleanup crew inside of the game, I'm like, that's interesting. But then it's not really an added element. It's an added moment, but it doesn't become like an added element. Yeah, the VIP's a real tough. I think of, in terms of the parallels within the tweaks, I think taking Inho, the front man, and making him sort of like, first of all, even though it was a repeat of season 1, and even though I think Gi-hoon is such an idiot for not considering that player number 1 might once again be a mole from the inside.
But to the Survivor comp point, Joe, could this be? It reminded me of. I won't use the cast member names so as to not spoil the result of a recent Survivor season for anyone who's listening. But like, reminded me of the conversation we were having this weekend about these two players who played together.
Yes.
Could they? What will they do when they're playing together again? Will they assume? So maybe this was like he couldn't. Surely he will say there's no way they could infiltrate in the
same
no
exact
player number again.
way. Yeah. But they did. But
they
that
did.
being said,
yeah.
Inho, and it's one of the best, I think, performances on the show, but
Easily my favorite. Yeah.
him being someone who won before.
Yes.
And his mission seemingly to be to prove to Gi-hun and then to himself that Gi-hun is no better than he is.
Yeah.
And that anyone, even the now virtuous Gi-hun, would break, because this is just human nature. And if it's human nature, then I don't have to feel bad about it. It is just what humans do. That sort of personal reason, rather than this sort of sociological, intellectual, isn't it fun to see poor people behave badly? This this man who we learn information in season 2 about why he entered the game in the first place, but his personal stake in the moral dissolution of a character.
Yes.
Which we see, in miniature in episode 2, when Gi-hun is chasing down and Daeho and successfully eliminating him, and it's just sort of like
the front man's watching every second of that from his monitor, and that's what he's tracking the entire entire fourth game.
So that is an example of same but different in a way that I think is so juicy.
Agreed.
And I don't think every element was as successful as that, but there are ways in which you could do the same but a slight twist on it, and have me on the edge of my seat and sort of really invested.
Definitely.
Anything else you want to say before we get into our squid suppositions, which is what I'm calling the sort of questions to ask ourselves here at the end?
Let's dive in. I'm ready.
All right. So moving out of season 2, which you were a little bit higher on than I was, but moving out of season 2 into season 3, what was there a character you were most invested in coming into season 3?
You just talked about him, the front man. Yeah. I first of all just have a really big crush. So handsome, it's just unbelievable. So I think it's we're gonna shift in a second here from single character to relationships, and so I actually won't linger on this long, because the relationship between the front man and Gi-hun is easily the thing that I was thinking about the most coming out of season 2 and also coming out of season 1 and then heading into season 2 and then coming out of season 2 and heading into season 3. So I'll chat about that more in a second. But obviously just on the character level, with the front man, you have everything you just outlined: his own personal history of loss, history as a winner, then a person who decides to stay in this experience, move up the ranks. And it's not only this bit of psychological, almost existential warfare between Inho and Gi-hun, but then also, of course, we have an additional, incredibly central relationship that the show is oriented around: the brothers, right? So,
yeah, how successful is that brother relationship for you?
That to me is probably the best example of thing I felt really invested in coming out of season 1, heading into the continuation of the show.
Their incredible confrontation at the end of season 1.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Obviously the shot to the shoulder to knock him over the edge, the choice not to kill his brother. And then we open season 2 and it's okay, he was rescued, he was taken back to shore, he was put in the hospital, he's okay, he's gonna start this search. Will he find the island? Will he find his brother? What will that conflict look like? That's high on the list of things that I was most interested in heading back into the story. And I think that while I actually have found our beloved Mr. Choi quite comedically hilarious, just Choi, hilarious across wonderful. 2 and 3, just great. Yeah. I just think that the very deeply protracted nature of the boat search in both 2 and then to this point in 3 for Junho has been a real letdown. I care about that relationship still, but the way that we are pursuing that clash has just it's so samey episode after episode.
It really is. And I also think I think it was pretty obvious early on that Captain Park
was
a rat. And so that, like, when you draw something like that out for so long, you make the character look stupid. The audience is so far ahead of the character. Yeah. It's so aggravating that he is not only like not figuring out for himself, but not even listening when other people are floating it as a possibility. Yeah. You know, this is very frustrating.
It's just like, my dude, something is going on here. I would like to talk to you about it over a late night snack and some booze. Yeah. And I think, like, you know, I had your point from a few minutes ago about, like, should Gi-hun have maybe been more suspicious of this very dramatically, like, suddenly we have the key vote and we are introducing our plant as player one again.
Right.
I think is totally fair. That did not sap for me, though, my enjoyment of watching them interact in season 2, which was such a highlight for me. I just loved, and in part because both performers are just spectacular. Their energy together is incredible. I really would recommend everybody catch up on your pods with Rob on Prestige for season 2, where you guys got into some of the shipping that's out there. The internet, you know, has really come through. But
I really feel like that was my, like, I got so Hannibal pilled because I really do think that actor looks like the Korean Mads Mikkelsen. And so, which is just a huge compliment to both men, extremely handsome. And so I was just like, got in my Hannibal head about it. But
it's great. It's great.
It's there. It's all there.
Gi-hun, who we love and are rooting for, to be clear, repeatedly makes ill-advised decisions or misses something. Like, a huge part of these first 3 episodes is this state of absolute, like, catatonic state-inducing despair that he finds himself in after the uprising failed. His dear friend is dead, but also everyone who participated in this is dead. The way that Daeho and the Cotton, like, obviously just them chasing each other, trying to kill each other in hide and seek is so deeply upsetting to watch. But, like, there's this moment where we've got notes for everyone, and mostly, of course, we should say who is actually at fault. The people in charge of the game, of course. Right. But there is that part of you watching when you're like, and Daeho is saying, this was actually, like, your fault, and you're playing back the end of season 2, not the very end, but, like, the decision, the strategic impetus for the uprising will hide. We will actually let people on Team Red X vote to go die. We won't attack the other side first so that we can be ready to take the guns when the soldiers come in. And of course, that, like, electric moment then where Frontman in Disguise is like, oh, so you're willing to make a sacrifice for the greater good? Interesting. Anyway, I raised that just to say, Gi-hun is a character I love, but I expect to make some mistakes and then hopefully learn from them and make better decisions in the future. Junho is a detective.
Yeah.
This is literally his profession. So it just completely, and he's devoted years of his life to this quest and this search that all centers and hinges on this idea that, like, somebody who you thought you know could be a different person. And yet he's, like, not only missing all of the clues and the signs, but when it is brought specifically to his attention is like, this guy really, like, helps me out. This has helped me out for, like, a while. This can't be
me. I know. He's my guy.
So that's just very tough.
Okay. So inside of that incredible conversation, we are going with Inho for you for character.
Which character were you most invested in coming in? I have some runners up, but I'll save them for after you say your leader here.
I'll say Hyunju was
wonderful
because Gi-hun is our protagonist. Gi-hun is, like, in the game, and I am interested and invested. But Hyunju was, like, just such an interesting story. A person who has all these people looking at her, judging her. How fraught and more dangerous than the need to trust people was for her. What an incredible badass she was during the uprising at the end of season 2.
Unbelievable.
And then just, like, her loyalty, her protection, her capability. Like, I didn't expect her to make it to the end, but I will say that when she died in episode 2, I was like,
Shattered.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
We'll
Like, what am
definitely be
I-
coming back to that. That was
What
crushing.
am I gonna do now?
Yeah.
My number
Yeah.
one character that I care the most about is gone.
Yeah.
But I found her vulnerability and paired with incredible strength
Yes.
to be so compelling inside of the
Yes.
story. And
Yes.
so that
and the
is-
beauty of finding acceptance with each other and these
Yeah.
surprising bonds that develop, like was just so lovely to watch. So yeah, that's my that would have been my other pick as well, and
Yeah.
we will be mourning together throughout the episode. No
Okay.
question.
Relationship you were most invested in coming into season 3.
Yeah. So as just mentioned, Gi-hun and the front man, I think just the philosophical showdown that we've gotten in drips with varying degrees of awareness from the participants, right?
Mhm.
Like, has been the highlight of the experience for me. The limo ride at the end of season 1, you like horse racing, you people are like horses at a racetrack conversation before the fog is put back in. Pre-uprising in season 2, what we just discussed, the like strategy and moral math that unfolds, and these veiled, but not to us watching at home with full awareness, bits of commentary that are obviously like indictments from the front man to Gi-hun, but also, like, to your point from earlier, a way to then absolve himself of the decisions that he has made. Like, it's just been great. And of course, like, season 2 ending with look closely at the consequences of your little game. And then, of course, that idea could be applied to every aspect, basically, of what we're watching. But I think that's always when the show is most successful, is when like a big macro broad idea for the entire proposition is presented to us in miniature inside of a given character set, right? Like, that's what's most potent. The singular focus for Gi-hun of like, I will return to the game to find this man, to find the front man and end this.
Stop it. Yeah.
Stop it, like, has been, in terms of just the engine of bringing the show back, like the heart of it, obviously. The watching them again, like, just align without, our protagonist realizing who he was aligning with. And, you and Rob talked about this a lot when you guys were covering season 2, and I really was like in lockstep with you both. I think that one of the most satisfying parts of watching season 2 was, okay, I feel like something is really sincerely transpiring between these people from the front man's perspective.
Yeah.
Right. And like,
Yeah.
I love that when you're like, how much of this is real? If it is real, and then the character has to rebel against it because of the other history in his life, like, that's even more tragic. It further heightens the despair that's already unfolding. That's been just great. And so, like, the fact that Gi-hun is hunting the front man, but thinks that his friend and ally, player 1, is dead because of the walkie-talkie fake out, was just like heading into season 3. I thought we were really brilliantly positioned to dive back into that dynamic and that blend of like interpersonal mixed with philosophical. And can either of them sway the other? Will they even try? Or is this just about like winning and thwarting the other person? I think has been the through line.
When will Gi-hun find out?
Yes.
And what will it do to him to find out?
Yes.
All of that stuff. Absolutely. I will say, I think it's, I don't know why I thought there would be a distinction, but I was like, I think character investment versus relationship investment can be quite different.
Yeah.
But I will similarly say that, like, it's Hyunju, Youngshik, Gimja, and like basically Gi-hun's alliance, but like everyone outside of him inside of his alliance.
That's my runner-up group as well. Yeah. I think that
Junhee, of course, who I wish had been a little bit better developed beyond this girl is pregnant, but but that group, which is why episode 2 is so tough. And I will, my next question for us is sort of like, what character are you most invested in for the final 3 episodes? And I will say that, like, with so many of my favorites off the board, I will say that a character like Myung-gi, who is, the crypto scammer, father of Junhee's baby,
MG coin,
like similar to Gi-hun in season 1, where we were like, we're watching him, probably if we stopped to think about it, we could expect we were watching a guy who was a loser with a really loose moral code find his inner best self to a certain degree by the end of Squid Game season 1. Despite what Gi-hun does with Daeho inside of episode 2, I'm actually not that worried or even actually that invested in his moral well-being. Perhaps I should be more so. But Myung-gi feels like someone who I'm like, at any given time, I'm not sure. And Junhee is constantly unsure because he will like do something and I'm like, okay, he's turned a corner and he's going to protect her. And then he does something where I'm like, no, this guy sucks. And she's like, wow, this guy sucks. I mean, in episode 2, under, the influence of his own inner demons and an external goading from someone. Goes on a murder spree. And kills my favorite character. And at the same time, I'm like, can this guy get it together? I don't know. That's the question I have going forward that I'm most bizarrely interested in. And I don't know if it's because I've got that like broken brain, problematic fave sort of thing. That's not how I really feel about him. But the tension for me, and Rob and I did talk about this, the tension for me is around this guy. Is this guy someone who can save him? Not necessarily even if he survives or not, that's not the question. It's like the moral enrichment. Can he morally emerge on the other side of this experience, or is he doomed forever to slip back into his worst instincts,
Similarly to what you were just saying about how heading into the season, did we think the picks for character and relationship would be different or the same? So he's your pick for character. That's my pick for the relationship that I'm most invested in for the rest of the season. Obviously, like with the acknowledgement that everything that we both just said about the frontman Hyun is still an open question. So of course my investment in that remains intact. But yeah, Myung-gi and Junhee and they're now present in the story baby. That's the relationship I'm most invested in for the final 3 episodes of the season. And I really agree with everything that you said. I think that with MG coin, our beloved MG coin, first of all, just like, again, inserting the crypto fraud like evil into the story was a great touch. But I think just in general, like, I'm with you. The really, really well done setting up this character as a character who is, I think, constantly teetering believably on the knife's edge of making good or bad decisions. Virtuous or deplorable decisions. And Namgyu, like, enlisting Myung-gi in this alliance in hide and seek, that was one of those moments where you're just watching at home and you're like, don't do it.
You're right.
Right? Just don't do it. And as soon as he agrees to that something horrible is going to happen. Like, it reminds me of what you were saying earlier, where like you sort of know that you're heading toward these awful outcomes. It's the interesting thing is to watch how you get there.
Yeah.
Like, most of the characters we're watching are going to die in a Squid Game season. That's what we're watching. That's what we're signed up to watch. The question is like what they learn or do, or how they grow along the way, or how they disappoint themselves and the people around them and us at home. So I think that like when Namgyu was like, oh, there's not just something going on here. You love her.
Right.
I was like, yeah, he does. You can see it on his face that those feelings are real, but that didn't stop him from chasing her money in season 2, right? When he's like, the whole pitch for them. Yeah. It's like, well, and then we'll have enough together to cover the debts, right? Or obviously abandoning her and their child before then. And when Junhee initially said that she didn't want to switch teams, there's that moment where he's like, then kill me. I'll come find you once the game begins, stab me with a knife, then you and the baby can live. And like, even though we have watched him game other people before, I like totally believed in that moment that he was
constantly believe him.
Yeah.
Like even that pitch you just mentioned where he's like, and then we'll both have enough money to cover the debt. Up until that moment, I was like, this is it. He's turned the corner. He's made it to the other side.
It's amazing. The seesaw, it's wild. It's been so good.
Yeah, he's really good.
I think that the look of real love and pain in his eyes watching her nurse the baby, but then again, also like proving either out of shame for what just happened in hide and seek or like doubt that she would welcome him, whatever, incapable. He is yet to, in these episodes that we're talking about today, like go over and see if she needs helpers. Okay, he's watching when they're heading to the game later, the fifth game, he's watching from across the stairwell as Gi-hoon goes over to Johnny and is like, let me help you with the baby, prompted by another deeply upsetting series of events that we'll talk about in short order, I have no doubt. The horror of, I'm with you, like just the absolute horror of what transpired in hide and seek when Myung-gi stabbed a shared favorite and beloved character, Hyunju, in the spine multiple times, and just the way that was like framed. So you sort of like know, but before you really know, you don't. It's got to be him, but like you haven't seen him. And then again, that knife's edge, like he does what he said, which is like, I will protect you. He doesn't rat out Junhee and the baby. He's like, no one else is in the room. Closes the door.
Yeah.
But he doesn't stay to protect her. He doesn't make sure that nobody else actually gets to her. Right. And so that was like so emblematic to me too. I think it's like already a really compelling relationship. And now you put the actual baby like born and in the game into the mix. Thanks, VIPs. And I think that that's just like really compelling. And I think that those characters have been interesting. And that dynamic is fascinating for like to see where that goes the rest of the way.
It's compelling as it pertains to him.
Yes.
I'm going to hop ahead to talk about the deaths in the stretch of the relationship, in the stretch of the show. Now, am I salty that all my favorites were like taken off the board? Mm-hmm. Sure. Because, Hyunju dies, and that is horrible. Young-shik is killed by his own mother to protect Junhee and the baby. Yeah. And it's all very upsetting. And then Kim-ja gives this pep talk to Gi-hoon about how they have to protect this baby. She gives this imploring speech.
Yeah.
And this pep talk to him. And then she kills herself.
Yeah.
And so when we watch Squid Game season 1, and it comes down to 3 players, and again, you know that it's probably going to come down to these 2 old friends.
Yeah.
Because that is the juiciest sort of situation that we come down to. But you have this like young woman I was so invested in, and then she's taken out. And at the time I was like, it feels like she was taken out just to motivate Gi-hoon, which is like a classic sort of fridging move. But I was just sort of like, okay, listen, it's Squid Game. Not everyone's going to survive. Okay, whatever. And then there's just a series of sacrificial women inside of this season 2. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and again, she's not, I'm not holding her up as an expert on this, but then again, I went and sort of tried to read a bunch of cultural commentary articles on this about like the archetype of women in Korean stories as self-sacrifice being sort of the ultimate virtue for female characters. And actually, the most articles I could find on this was talking about how that has been changing a lot with recent Korean dramas, that you've got Attorney Woo, which is like one of the most popular Korean, my aunt loves to talk about that K-drama, as like women moving out of that space and into these other roles. But inside of Squid Game, I feel like again and again, and we do have the character Noelle, who is like this action hero woman. But I think it's very telling that you and I have not talked about that storyline at all. Even though in theory it should be something I am very emotionally invested in, it's not something I am regrettably emotionally invested in. And I just feel like once again, we're lining up things to position a story so that it's all like Gi-hun now has, when he crosses the bridge here, custody of the baby. The baby is now like a Gi-hun responsibility. And I'm just sort of like, all of this felt like it was leading up to that. And again, he's the protagonist, so I shouldn't be like too upset about that. But I just felt like woman after woman, I was just like, she's crazy. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's something going on inside of Squid Game that feels a little off to me in terms of its setup and sacrifice of various female characters. So that's sort of where I'm sitting here in season 3.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I certainly don't, feel like remotely equipped to comment on the presentation of like certain cultural archetypes because I just am not, well versed enough in Korean storytelling. But I think that's really interesting. And I think like I'm wondering if something about the like just death toll, like the heft of the loss and the savagery on display in Squid Game has made that made that feel a little less keen to me than it otherwise would have, because it's like hundreds and hundreds. Everyone's gonna yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that but I don't say that at all to in any way challenge or discount the point you're making. And I think like a character like Jeon-hee, it is a great character to talk about, because like, yeah, we have so much we don't know really like about her life. And I think that's true more broadly for like the bulk of the characters. Ultimately, I think that so many of the women in the story have been in seasons 2 and 3, like the more compelling characters to spend time with.
Totally.
Certainly. And so then like, yeah, feeling the hit of their death. I think the question of like sacrifice and who is willing to sacrifice for whom, like inside of the mother-son relationship, the fact that kind of goes back and forth, like who is willing to do what for whom and when, was interesting to watch. But it's certainly, I will say, like, I definitely felt like we were heading to like, that was one where it's like, we know there can't be a happy ending for those characters definitively. So the question is like, who basically lets the other person down or lets themselves down, and like the most, to your pain math point from earlier, the most devastating way possible. So yeah, I was very affected by everything that happened with those characters.
Gyeongja killing herself, like I understand, like she's killed her son, and has made a plea on behalf of an innocent life, and been devastated to see a large group of people say, we don't give a shit, we're gonna do this anyway. So that is devastating and heartbreaking to her. I just don't understand. It felt slightly inconsistent for me for that character. And again, there are cultural layers that I don't understand. I can do all the reading in the world and still not understand. But like, for that character to have given so much to protect Jeon-hee and the baby, and then take her own life. And I'm like, are you not going to continue to try to do everything you can until you can't anymore to protect this person that you have made the ultimate sacrifice for in killing your own son? Like, we're just taking ourselves off the board now? Like that, again, that was more frustrating than it was heartbreaking to me. And I loved that character so much. I loved that performance. So I don't know. She was wonderful. That was a tough one for me. Anything you want to say on the death front? Was there like one that you wanted to really dig into? My pick for most meaningful, impactful, upsetting, throw any term to describe a state of complete and abject despair in front of it, death is definitely Hyunju.
No question. I mean, I was really distraught, like, watching that. I think that, for a number of reasons, everything you've already said about how just, like, wonderful and impactful the character was and the performance was. I think, like, the specific nature of during hide and seek, just, like, again, this friendship that has developed between these characters. Like, I love that "don't we make a great team" moment. The fact that you have this really, like, sinister twist with the keyholes and the 3 shapes. And that, for most of the players in the game, that is clearly designed to spark what we see elsewhere with a number of different characters throughout the episode, right?
Right.
Ripping a key off of somebody who you're going to kill or leave for dead. Waiting for somebody else to open the door and then taking the keys, player 100 and shove it in the sea. What a moment between them.
What a guy. Yeah.
But the fact that for Hyunju, Junhee, and Gyumza, like, this was a really rare group of people inside of the game who actually formed something meaningful with each other and could work as a team. Yeah. And to watch the joy on their faces, like, realizing, even just something like the trust of, like, will you carry all of them? Like, who else in the game would have that level of trust from anyone, right? The number of different moments where, like, they're like, just leave us. Like, we have been a burden for too long. And, like, there are very few characters in the show where you would have no reason to doubt the decision that they would make. And I was like, I don't doubt for a second, literally not a second, that Hyunju is going to stay and protect them no matter what. Right. And so then, like, and we get the just incredible, like, accomplishment and prowess of, like, charging and killing the would-be, Team Red assailants, taking the knife, the nurturing and tenderness of being there to help during the labor. But, the winning stroke on the devastation front is obviously just, like, like you said, finding the exit, the step over the threshold, hearing the golden light and hearing the song, congratulations, you did it. And, like, she was safe. Like, she was out and she was safe and she chose to go back anyway. Yeah. And there are just so few people that, like, she had all 3 keys, She didn't need anyone else, but she decided that she did for different reasons. The need wasn't about moving forward in the game. It was about, like, the depth of that devotion to each other. Just, like, a true, rare, good person in the game. And that was, like, amazing to watch. And it was really, really upsetting. And then, of course, just you feel the absence, like, the vacuum so immediately. Yeah. Really, really painful. Really
and
painful.
I want to say, again, I know that I'm watching Squid Game, and I do not expect that my favorites are going to make it all the way to the end or anything like that. And I will say, even on the flip side of that, someone like Player 100, who you just mentioned, just the evilest dude.
Terrible.
And reminds me a lot of this one character in this is my second week talking about Train to Busan, one of the great zombie films. But, like, those evil old rich dudes, even though he's in a ton of debt, he's an evil old rich dude.
10 billion.
Making it very far feels right to me. I'm like, yes, of course. Yeah. Of course. The worst dude is going to make it so far in this game. Yeah. And that feels like I'm not upset about that. I'm like, that
feels right.
That's how that feels. So it's not like, oh, all the nice people are dying. It's sort of like when they die and what they take in terms of my emotional investment away from. Like, if the scales are tipped of, like, too many people I don't care about are still competing in this game, versus in Squid Game season 1, like, I'm all in on our final 3 contestants in season 1, like, okay. Let's go back to most intriguing cultural commentary. Anything that you wanted to say on that front?
We've talked about this a little bit already. I get this is cultural, but just also more broadly, like, political and obviously, like, part of the mission of the show is to assess Korean society and Korean culture and Korean politics, but also there's, like, something that you are going to bring to it as a viewer from, like, wherever you're watching, and also something undeniably just global about the state of division and deeply entrenched divides in global politics right now. So I thought that the stretch in episode 1, where the workers and the soldiers lead the players past the very like the Seraphites and Wolves esque tableau
Hanging
of the
bodies,
hanging bodies on their way to the 4th game. And we get the PA announcement. You are witnessing the fate of those who refuse the democratic process of voting and instead attempted to stop the game using violent means. We will not tolerate any irrational behavior which attempts to destroy the fair rules of this game. Like, that is a potent commentary, of course, that, again, I think, like, you know, depending on where you are in the world and where you're watching from, you're going to be thinking about the corollaries or the commentaries that apply to your political system. The idea that challenging the structure and system is, irrational and must then be met in turn with decisive, quieting violence is so intentionally, of course, is so disturbing and upsetting and just very top of mind. Watching this in our current political climate in the United States of America, and again, I think just you know, more globally,
Yeah, I think on a similar front, I will say that, you know, and this is something that the creator has talked about specifically in terms of, you know, we get so many we're voting again, we're voting again, we're voting again sequences. The way in which these 2 seasons are interested in exploring the way people will vote against their own interests. Again and again. Now, the blue circle wearing crowd have convinced themselves that they are voting in their own interest because we're voting to, you know, ratchet up the prize money here. And so this is in our own interest. But at the end of the day, you know, we've seen Squid Game before. We know most of these people are not going to, you know, if any, are going to make it out. And so they are, at the end of the day, voting for their own demise.
No question.
And how easily this group of people could overwhelm the oppressors who have them locked up, but they cannot form a coalition in order to do so. And so all of that, again, I don't think it matters where in the world you're watching that. And to lean into a Tony Gilroy point of view, no matter when in history you're watching. That. Like, this is just, again, across what time. Humans do. So,
no doubt. I thought that the moment where the front man after the 4th game, after hide and seek, as they're voting between the 4th game and the 5th game, just assures the VIPs, don't worry. Like, the vote can only possibly go one way. And some of that is because of the math, right? Like, he notes that 16 of the 25 who survived were already Team Blue. But the other thing that he says is, like, everyone's going to be pretty nervous going against the majority after the uprising failed, which again is just so pointed, intentionally so. You know, that's part of what the show is exploring. But yeah, and like, I think, you know, to your point, like, that we know that the numbers are just going to keep dwindling. It's like, by this point, so does everybody in that room who's voting, and so there's that. You know, and obviously when the VIPs are talking about, like, they're doing the number crunching and, there's like this really like hideous, deeply bigoted framing of like how much money is like a lot to a certain person in a certain circumstance. It's all like, again, intentionally really horrible. But like, when you step back from it and you just kind of like remember the introduction to the characters and whose debt was where, and then you were like the number of people who like actually maybe had enough to cover their losses, and it's like, at a certain point, when does it shift from self-preservation to greed? And so like, having the character like Player 100 kind of leading that charge, I agree with you, feels just so right. Obviously his debt total was higher, but it's just deeply painful to watch. And like, I think that you know, to go back to Gyumza and that desperate attempt to convince everybody, like, okay, take pity on me, like an old lady. Don't make me keep doing this. what about the baby? What about this woman who has just given birth? Like we've got like basically like a even more heightened exponential version of like Alicent making Rhaenyra walk across the Red Keep after giving birth. Is like, we're really gonna just like put Jomi back into the game. This is nuts. And for that plea, which is ultimately, even though she does offer up her money, like if you still don't have enough, I'll give you mine. You can split it. She's ultimately making a plea that is less rooted in dollars and cents and much more rooted in, it's an appeal to humanity. Like, please just find some grace inside of you to like end this horror show. And they, in a wave, vote to stay.
I know. It's devastating. There's this like thin crust of, we all made a choice to be here. We all decided to be here, and we are all actively voting again and again to stay. So this like justification of the absolutely demented cruelty here is like, we all decided, we have some control over this sort of thing. Yeah. There's air quotes for people who aren't watching this on video around that. And then you introduce this baby who made no choice, has made no choices in their life, is the quintessentially innocent person, that, you know, these rich VIPs who we're about to get to in a second, or the recruiter who we spent so much time with in season 2,
the best,
one of the most handsome men alive. But like that, their justification in life is, people have made these choices, and when they find themselves at the bottom of the ladder of life, it's because of these terrible choices that they've made, and they had control, and they're why they're there. So I don't have to pity them or help them or anything like that, because this is their decision that they made. Right. And then this baby is here, and everyone has decided the baby, and by everyone I mean like the VIP assholes, decided the baby is going to be in the game anyway.
So twisted.
And so it's just like you're exploding your, you know, absolutely razor thin excuse that you had in place in the first place.
Let's talk.
Sorry.
What you were saying was reminding me, like, on the on that front, about just the idea of like choice and the decisions that you make and the bearing that has on your life. I did think it was like important. You know, we've had like a character like the Shaman of the Sea, sort of weaponizing the absence of free will against Gi-hun and other characters. And certainly using that idea of like, I'm not using my eyes to see, I'm guided by the voices. Genuine laugh for me. When she was like looking at her little blood arrow. Side eye to find the blood arrow. That was such a great touch. Very good. But I thought it was really important that the idea of choice and like you get to make your decisions wasn't only presented inside of these episodes and ultimately in this final season as like the thing that might doom or damn you. So I thought it was really crucial that we got that conversation between Gi-hun and Junhee about like, because she's not only grieving, she's like consumed by guilt, right? Like, it's my fault. Now we've had with Daeho and Gi-hun this whole like, whose fault is it? What happened? What went wrong with the uprising? Like, it's like this that's the thrust for those characters. So, and then, you know, when after he has killed somebody, strangled him with his bare hands,
he sure did.
Gi-hun's like, it was my fault, and then enters like a different state of paralysis, because he's blaming himself. And so then to kind of be pulled out of that and say to Junhee, like, it's not your fault. We made a choice. Like, all of these different people, both of us, Hyunju, like, everybody made a choice ultimately. And like, he shares about his own life and his regret with his daughter, but also how those first moments after she was born were like the best of his life. And I just thought like the way that like, finding lessons for himself and other people's pain, but then also like using his own pain to hopefully unlock a lesson for somebody else felt like an important step, because he's in such a state of like basically being rendered still and silent by these oppressors. And then when he's activated, it's purely motivated by vengeance, right? And so to like watch him move from season 1 fighting for himself to survive, season 2 fighting for everyone, for an idea that is almost like so big, how do you express it or try to channel it? Right. And then now at, you know, where we are 3 episodes into season 3, fighting for something more specific, right? Fighting to like help Junhee and her baby, or like help another person believe that there could be a way to move forward, or that you could forgive yourself and let yourself off the hook for something terrible that happened to someone you cared about.
Yeah.
That all felt pretty crucial.
I thought it was really interesting. And I did find the moment where he was talking to her on the stairs.
Yeah.
Like very powerful, but like ultimately that idea is interesting and yet feels underexplored and out of balance with some other things that are here.
Yeah.
The VIPs. Okay.
Yeah.
We've already talked about, we don't need to like harp on this. We think it's just a huge misstep. And I did tweet about this. One of the worst sentences anyone's ever said on a podcast. I did tweet about this, but I did tweet with like a dumb Wayne's World 2 joke, but I was just like them being the actors playing the VIPs being so terrible in season 1 bothered me way less, because I was just sort of like, well, whatever, this is for Korean audiences and, you know, the budget is what it is and whatever it is. Them being somehow even worse and by now they have all the resources in the world to cast this differently or do this differently, and they went with this anyway. I got a lot of responses from people saying like, from Western people who have acted in Korean work or this sort of thing, is like they want the performance to be as broad and exaggerated as possible, so that it is legible to someone who doesn't speak English, so that they can grok what is going on. And the flip side of that is that a lot of non-English speaking characters that we get in Western media may seem similar to people. I've heard this all the time when we were covering Lost. Like Yoonjin Kim speaks beautiful Korean, who plays Sun on Lost, but Daniel Day Kim does not speak Korean very well. And you could have fooled me, of course, to my dumb ears, but like people who speak Korean watching Lost are like, what am I listening to? Inside of this conversation. And so like, turnabout's fair play and all that sort of stuff like that. I'm just like, I feel like there has to be a better way to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, which is a performance that is broad and legible to a non-English speaking audience, because I don't need this to be oriented towards me. This is a Korean product. That's fine. And also just like less tooth grindingly bad. I just don't understand. And in some of the cases, those actors are being dubbed. It's not just like these broad bad American accents, but like a broad bad American accent dubbed over a different person. And I'm just like, it's just, again, I don't understand why this couldn't have been done in a way that satisfies all those things. I feel like we could have gotten there,
Yeah. Again, this like really is not working for me in season 3. I think that certainly something about the like intentionally heightened, dial it up to forget 11, let's go to 100, like cartoon evil of it all. To the point that it's like, and right down to the fact that even though they have seen each other's faces, they took off their triangle masks when they were going in for cleanup after hide and seek. They still wear
put the mask
bejeweled animal masks. Obviously, like all of that is there to, again, like kind of heighten the inhuman nature of what we're watching. I think that's all fine. This is like just not very good. And
just
like,
not good.
I know.
And there's so much of it.
Exactly. And so like, I think in season 1, it was much more calibrated, where it's concentrated inside of the 9 episode season, and then also just like how much of it. And we are much more, I think, just on the edge of our seat in those sequences, because we're watching Junho's infiltration move to this next stage, and like the tension is really keen. That's not happening here. Like there's I guess like the closest we get, I'm trying to think if I'm like forgetting. It's mostly just them like, having dinner and then sitting around with the front man, like talking about like comparing and contrasting to big game hunting. Like that's literally the most of what it is. I mean, I guess we have Noel like kind of using their presence as leverage with the officer, basically like, wouldn't it be better to like do what I say because you don't want me like messing this up for you? But other than that, they're like, it's a little bit more contained, but also then expanded in a way that's just very strange. I do think we should ask, is it all worth it? Is it all worth it for this exchange? This might turn 222 into some kind of Marvel superhero, like Wonder Woman. That's actually a DC superhero. But anyway, seems reasonable to me. And of course, seems reasonable to me applies to putting the baby
in the game. Listen, did I at home before the characters say that's DC actually say that's DC actually?
Of course.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I chuckled. That was good.
That was good. It's funny. Most emotional moment. Does anything beat what we've already talked about, which is the death of Hyunju or the Gi-hun conversation on the stairs?
I bet, this is where I was we've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but this is where I was going to chat about mother and son, Gi-hun and Young-shik. Like, I think that was that moment of having to make that decision. I think everything, your points are really well made. And I was like, even though I knew that something terrible was going to happen, I was pretty like, oh my God, this is like awful while watching that moment. The doomed nature of the pairing and the doomed nature of like the bulk of the people who are in the arena. There's this like, how could it not end horribly aspect that's undeniable, as you noted. But I think like the way we built toward this climactic decision for them was potent. Everything that happened like during Mingle, the pulling away, like allowing him, was he pulled away by other people? Yes, but like, did he allow it to happen and like go to safe harbor? And then the shame and like her shame is presented in protecting him, both so other people don't know that this happened, but also because how horrible for her if they know that it did. Like it's just all been really good up to this point.
So good.
They're great. And like the decision, I thought that they're
bored in episode 2
it's
of your final season.
It is like the I'm with you. The characters we lost in this episode, like it takes something out of the rest of the season, no question.
Yeah.
Their conversation about whether to switch teams, like at the beginning when the players have this period where they can, upon mutual agreement, so they can't just like, you can't just strong arm another player into switching with you. I mean, you probably could, but like you're not supposed to, right?
Right.
And this decision, like the fear that he has, but it's actually stated by her first, right? Like you're not going to be able to hurt anyone. Like even when you were a kid, like you were always the one who got hurt.
You're not this guy.
And how that kind of builds toward then what she reveals to Gi-hun later. But the idea, I thought that was such a effectively warped and fucked up way to like wallop us. The idea that he is a character who can't hurt another person, and that's a liability here, was just like, fuck. That's when the show is at its best, I think. And the fact that like, and we watch these kind of moments where he can't do it. He finds a blue cowering behind the door, but then is basically duped. Like, I have a sick mother too. And then that player gets the upper hand, and then another red comes in and gets the kill. Like, you're just like watching the minutes on the clock melt away, knowing that you are marching toward this horrible outcome. And then, when his mother says to Jeon-hee, like, go through the exit, and that's when he charges, because he's like, this is my only chance. And she has said to him, like, just because he's like, I didn't do it. I couldn't kill anyone, so I'm gonna die. And then she says, kill me. Just stab me. Like, I've lived long enough. And he's just like sobbing, like, how could I do that? But then she has to be the one to do that. And of course, this like this secret hairpin blade that's been there the whole time. The moment in season 2 when she's like, if anyone comes at me, like, I'm ready. And then of course they remind us that it's there. Boy, also, that was painful.
All of that, Young-shik not being able to kill someone, watching the clock tick down, and having characters like Myung-gi running around killing extra people.
Yes.
So you're like, not only are you taking people off the board, and this was the pitch, but not only are you taking people off, but you're screwing other people in the in red.
Yes.
Of victims
the more we kill, the fewer. Yeah, like we're doubling up.
Yeah, we're doubling
the pot
our
there. That was
and
gnarly.
all of the like doll's eyes stuff and stuff like that.
Oh my
I will
God,
say,
that was intense.
I don't believe this is how drugs work. I'm not an expert, but throughout, I will say, and I can't remember if Rob and I talked about this, but I'm sure we must have. But like the Smarties-esque whatever's in the crucifix, they look like the pellets you use to dye Easter eggs, whatever they are, whatever party drugs they may be.
Yeah,
I don't feel like this is how drugs work. They just do whatever the plot needs them to do at any given time. So, do you need hallucinations? Do you need to be speedy?
Yeah.
Do you need to like whatever?
Mitsu is really going through it after popping one, hallucinating. Various figures. I did think that it felt very like poetic and satisfying to watch Mitsu toss the now empty cross out onto the bridge, because obviously that was like. Very, very charged inside of that, the relationship between those characters and everything with the larger, like kind of abusive Thanos group, but also just you have the tension around them of like the clock is ticking and someone's got to go
on the bridge.
Walk out. Because we haven't talked about the jump rope at all, but like that's obviously in the third episode. Like to see the
jump rope, the bridge being back, but there's a jump rope element this time, and how that added element means Gi-hun can't like simply carry mother and child across because he has to jump as he goes, you know what I mean? So he's like, okay, one at a time, I can do this, but it can't just simply be a dash across with like multiple people draped around him. Do you know what I mean? So
this was a good example to me of while acknowledging I have never been in this exact circumstance, nor do I care to be.
Yeah.
No. I'm like, does he really think he's going to be able to get back over there? There are going to be other players blocking his path.
He thought it first, and then he turns around. There's all those people.
Yeah,
so
I'm like, what was the plan here? Like that. There's just not we're down from 20 to 17 minutes before like anything is happening. We just and given that like other players obstructing the path for moving forward was such a key part of Glass Stepping Stones in season 1, I'm like, this feels like kind of short memory in a really contextually relevant and similar
spot. Can you all
spot.
just stand there for a second? I have to get a baby across and then a lady with a busted ankle. So if you could just take a park.
Nobody else is going to wait for you to do
your
that.
butt on a bench for a second.
They're on the clock.
I will say about Namgyo's death at the before he can get across the bridge. I did like that, not just because that's like an evil character who should die, but I like that. Like I do like all of the shit that happens in the hide and seek game.
Yeah.
To protect various people or to ensure, and then for those people to just die immediately.
Yeah.
Also is, just what the games we're here to play. Okay.
Exactly.
Most surprising twist.
I have to be honest, I had a hard time with this because I think to the larger point that we've hit a couple times today, part of the proposition with Squid Game is like expect the twist, expect to lose people that you don't think in a normal show you wouldn't expect to lose. So that's sort of what we're always primed for.
Maybe for me it's Sunyo, Shaman of the Sea, me actually being upset when she died, even though she was like a horrible, awful character. But when Player 100 takes her out, I was like, oh.
That was brutal. Closing the door on her was boy, that was a tough moment. I guess my pick is like, maybe this is dumb because, obviously when you introduce a pregnant character and like there are conversations about, boy, it seems like your due date's pretty soon. Like, and then they put out the season 3 trailers and the trailers end with the baby crying. It's like, very clear that the baby is going to be born. So I wasn't surprised by that. But I was surprised that it happened in episode 2.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of the season to have to account for a baby being here. Like a lot. So I was not expecting
That's the thing.
The baby to arrive that soon.
I will share for listeners when I texted you and I was like, episode 2 harrowing, and you're like, I'm guessing it's baby based. And I was like, not really. The baby does come. That's not why I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I was still like, yeah. Okay. And then most harrowing game, either season 2 or season 3. Do we agree that it is hide and seek?
Has to be.
Yeah, it has to be.
I just don't see how it.
I think in terms of
else.
like me edge of my seat, what choices are people going to make? Mingle actually hit harder for me. But this was just, if the word is harrowing and I did write the word harrowing in our document, then it's got to be hide and seek. So,
I thought, I'm with you on Mingle. I thought that was amazingly executed, and that extra element of like, it is rooted in teaming up and alliance building and standing together. And then of course you have to betray that and cast somebody aside or choose somebody else over them. And it just was so warped. And then of course you get the added elements of like, well, what if there are only so many rooms? It's not just who are you going in with, it's that there are only so many rooms. Diabolical, genuinely. Yeah. So that was really good. I thought, like I already said, that hide and seek was kind of the twin to and the successor to the Marbles episode, because it is so rooted in the interpersonal, either when the characters could find strength in that, or when that heightens, whether it is literally a mother having to choose to stab her own son, and then he turns to see that she is the one who did it before he dies. And like, I thought, then the moment where the soldiers come in and it's like, it's done already for various reasons. She stabbed him, the rules of the game, but she's like, spare him. Like all of that was just, I thought the ratcheting up, because Marbles is like, I think that losing Hyunju in this episode was the most upset I've been by a character death since Ali in season 1 in the Marbles which was like so upsetting, not only because he was so sweet and wonderful, but because of what we saw Sang-woo do. Like, it was just gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
This was like more broadly, I thought, like just a ratcheting up of that like element of the math of the game. There are some games that they enter into and it's like, how many people will make it out? We'll find out. That's not what this was, right? It's like, the number is set and it can only go up from there. It can't go down. And that's just so insidious as a starting point, and then you heighten it with like the relationships between the characters really being centered, and you have the clock and you have the maze. What do you think took longer to film and choreograph? Using this hide and seek set with the corridors and the doors, or Mark S having to run in season 2 of Severance? It's like,
it's Mark S running, because I know that took like
8 months?
8 months.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Wild. This is wild.
Okay. I will say, on the hide and seek front, and we already mentioned this moment, but when we knew that it had to be Yoongi 333 who had stabbed Hyunju, just for, I guess, tragedy math.
Yeah.
When Jun-hee sees that it's him, though, having just been like, because she could hear, because they're doing like the Hunger Games thing, and she can hear like, he killed who he needed to kill.
He passed. Yeah.
He passed. And now he's gonna come help me.
The way that she said he referred to him as my friend. Yeah.
She's like, he's gonna come through. And I was like, I too keep trying to believe Jun-hee. Like, I am with you. And so when she's like, and that felt like an unrecrossable Rubicon when he kills Hyunju. Like, there's been this back and forth of like, can I trust him? Can I not? Whatever. But that decision that he made, not even really thinking about it. He was just in his like blood frenzy. He had killed so many people at that point. What's another person?
Right.
Like it wasn't like he didn't know who it was really, like Hyunju. Like he was not making, he was just indiscriminately killing it. And that choice,
turns out that was the problem.
Yeah. That's not great. But that choice shut a door to him forever. It hasn't shut all doors, because he still has a chance to sort of like be a stand-up guy in some way or another. But in terms of like, can these two people leave this game with their baby together?
It feels like something
that's
broke,
over, man.
Something
that's
broke there for
done.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oy.
All right. Well, that was Squid Game, season 3, 1 through 3. We will be back with 4 through 6 and our feelings sort of about the series as a whole and some other questions about what is the future of this franchise, et cetera, here at the End of All Things. Do we feel like that Rotten Tomatoes IMDb score is justified? How do we feel? hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com if you have any thoughts or feelings about Squid Game. I'm curious to hear them.
Yes.
And
we did our best on the character name pronunciations. We beg your forgiveness if we erred. We tried really hard.
I'm sure we did,
yes.
but we did try. Thank you to Carlos Chiriboga and John Richter, Jomi Adeniran, and Arjuna Ramgopowell, our alliance, our team, who would stab whomst inside of a Squid Game? Who's to say? But I like to believe that we would all make it out together somehow.
That's the spirit, buddy.
Thanks, Val. We'll be back with more Squid Game. And again, Back to the Future next week. Inception, like some real timey-wimey mind stuff next week. I'm really excited for it. And we'll see you soon. Bye.